Tom, are you okay?
I lost her.
Her?
She was going to be this epic trilogy-worthy character. I was going to be the hottest writer in Hollywood. But I can't get past Act 1.
You need some writers group therapy. Hello and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers. Are you ready for your session? The doctors are in. So, before I cancel my Netflix subscription, I watched that movie that everyone's been talking about, Bird Box. You saw it, right?
I saw it, yes.
So we decided we're going to have a new segment called Versus. And so this is going to be Bird Box versus A Quiet Place.
Which we both saw. We saw that together, I think, A Quiet Place.
We did.
Mm-hmm.
So initial impressions.
Well, comparing them, a lot of people have made this comparison because it's a horror movie where the antagonist is focused on a single sense. And we should back up a second. Spoilers, if you haven't seen these movies yet, spoilers.
Oh, yeah, go watch the movies and then come back.
Watch the movies and come back, yeah, okay.
That goes without saying.
We'll wait for you.
Okay, now...
Are they gone now? They're gone, okay. Okay. In A Quiet Place, it was sound. You made a sound and the monsters would come and get you. In a Bird Box, if you laid eyes on whatever the villain was, the monsters or the entities, then you'd go crazy and kill yourself or become a true believer and force everyone else to look at the monsters and either kill themselves or become a true believer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the interesting thing is I think people compare them because they did come out within a relatively short time of each other, but Bird Box was actually a book before it was a film, and that book predates A Quiet Place. But I think you and I have talked before about, especially in like sci-fi or fantasy type things, you get one ask from the audience. One. You can't ask things of them over and over and over. So in A Quiet Place, it's please believe that if you make a sound, you will die. All right, now go.
That these monsters exist.
Mm-hmm. But in Bird Box, it felt like they asked a lot of the audience over and over and over.
From a sci-fi perspective, like what's the unbelievable thing that they wanted you to believe?
Well, I think,
multiple things, I guess.
Like, fine, you see the monster, you go crazy, you kill yourself, you kill other people, fine. But then all of a sudden, some people could get away and be immune, or, you don't know when a monster is going to appear. So fine, you're running around blindfolded all the time, but you would think there'd be maybe something else then that would cue you in, maybe like a smell on the air, a sound or something.
Yeah. There wasn't a hint or something. There wasn't the monsters didn't have some sort of the birds, I guess, was the thing. The birds went crazy when the monsters were around. So that
but they didn't figure that out at all.
Kind of really on the nose, the canary in the coal mine kind of thing.
So it just felt like a little weird that they kept asking more and more without, I guess it's like, did you not figure out your world? Does that make sense? That's kind of how it felt to me. Like, I get it, and I'm with you on the one thing, but now you're asking me for another thing and another thing and another thing.
They actually they did try to set up the rules. So they tried to tie the one guy to the chair and have him watch the video cameras to see if the effect would translate through the technology, and it did. So that seemed rather odd because usually that kind of I'm trying to think of other movies where they've had that kind of like you can it's like
viewing it with the mirror, kind of like Medusa. You can see it with the mirror. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's not because what is it about that connection between you and the entity that causes that to happen? But I guess they didn't really explain anything about why that worked or not.
Humor me, because I will be honest, I stopped like halfway through because I got so annoyed. But I did kind of wonder, was it a perfect sight thing? Like for me, for example, I'm like completely blind without my glasses or contacts. So if I see this blurry thing, am I still going to go nutso or not? Maybe partially crazy because I can only partially understand what's happening.
Do you know how it ends? Did you discover that?
I read the synopsis. Like I
Okay.
said, I got annoyed around the driving to the grocery
Yeah. Well,
store.
they wind up getting directed to a bird aviary inhabited by blind people. There's like a colony of people living together who couldn't see, so they were not affected, and they had all these birds in there, so they had like a warning system if the monsters were nearby. So they knew when it was okay to open the door to let people in. And so I
Okay,
guess
but
there's
what about, I'm asking, what about people who do not have 20/20 vision?
right. Well, that's kind of yeah. That was never addressed. If there's kind of if you have cataracts, are you okay?
Yeah,
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 there
because,
was
like, for
never
me,
a
all I'd have to do is just break my glasses and run around and see things in a really big blurry
right.
haze.
Uh-huh.
So,
Because
and
they actually showed like Sandra Bullock's perspective at times, like through the blindfold. So she wasn't completely blind. There was a little bit of you could see a little bit of the environment around them, but it was very blurry and very
mhm.
masked. It wasn't quite
But
transparent.
so
So
going the reason I'm on a soapbox about this is because, again, if you're gonna ask for world building, I'm a glasses wearer. Guess what? Like, a majority of people in the world are glasses wearers. Okay, this is
right,
like, poor eyesight is actually something that genetically, if we were all being Darwinian about it, should have been, you know, bred out of humanity, right? Because people with poor eyesight would have
sure.
theoretically died and not passed on
Or
their
walked
genes.
off a cliff or got eaten by a lion.
Yeah, but because we're, humans and we can adapt, we've corrected for that poor vision thing. So that's why I'm like, that's a big question. People who have not 20/20 vision and not 20/15, but I'm talking like really poor eyesight. Is there a scale of, I can't drive without my glasses on.
Right.
So if I perceive this monster, am I still going to know what I'm seeing?
Mhm.
And am I going to go crazy? I feel that's a legit question. They
Yeah.
never explain that.
Mhm.
People just smash your glasses and you're free, right?
Well, except for the fact that there was a portion of the people who did not kill themselves, but then would, if you wouldn't look at the monsters, they would kill you. So there was, kind of a catch-all there because these.
And it's a little, to me, that was where I'm like, okay, you're asking too much now.
Yeah, yeah,
You can't have this and
the
this and
degrees.
that,
Mhm.
just one.
Yeah, there was the much maligned The Happening, the M Night Shyamalan movie with Mark Wahlberg,
Oh, I haven't
and
seen it.
yeah, it was very similar to a Bird Box in the fact that all you had was like the breeze blowing, and in that movie it was the plants that were actually sending toxins out into the world to kill humans because they decided we were too dangerous. We were destroying the environment too much.
Mm.
So, and literally people, when the wind would blow by, they just stop what they were doing and then do something to kill themselves. Like one guy laid down under a lawnmower, other people jumped off of buildings, and or crashed their cars. That breeze was kind of, you're always watching the trees and the breeze to see where the wind was going, and people were running from the wind, and it was horribly maligned. I mean, I thought it was okay. I didn't. It had some great characters and some pretty intense drama to it, but as far as a sci-fi film, that ask that they had, that the plants are killing everyone, was a little bit out there. But it was more consistent than Bird Box because it worked pretty much the same way each time. They
Hmm.
didn't constantly change the rules as they went.
Yeah. I think why A Quiet Place, which I will say is amazing and it totally deserved, being nominated and stuff. I think why that one works is because the threat is external versus Bird Box, where yes, the threat is external, but it affects you psychologically and it affects everybody different, which is their
Right.
little out to make their rules change. Whereas in A Quiet Place, like you said, it's consistent and it's an external threat, and we can all get behind. Like, even though the little girl is deaf, she understands that if I make a noise, it can still be heard. There's still
Mhm.
consequences for actions even if she cannot perceive them, because that is how the world works. And it's an external thing and it makes sense, versus Bird Box, where it's like, and now this, and it changes, and you know
Mhm.
maybe you're crazy, maybe you're not, who knows, whatever. It affects some animals, it doesn't affect other ones. What?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And A Quiet Place, was a microcosm of a larger world that they were. They're going to do a sequel to it, so we'll find out what happened in probably the broader world, or it'll be another section of the story happening somewhere else. Um, but they did show us some a wall of newspaper clips and stuff, so we kind of got a little bit of a history about what had happened before. And in one story, a Bird Box, is about people dealing with the apocalypse as it happens, and then the other one is about people dealing with an apocalypse after, like, surviving it and kind
Yeah.
of managing it. And that's kind of where Bird Box ends. Is like and one thing I didn't like about Bird Box is it gave you an ending, but it really wasn't an ending, because there were way too many holes at that in that ending, and again, these people were blind, but it doesn't mean they're completely safe. Plus, they've been letting in sighted people for a while now, and it just takes one of them to screw that up, which they kind of prove earlier in the movie when they have one person let into the house who then turns on them. So I feel like that in itself is kind of like Bird Box was kind of like not the prequel of its own, but it was kind of just the beginning of the story. And A Quiet Place, we've kind of skipped the inciting incident, and we've kind of just jumped into the people surviving in that world. I think A Quiet Place has an option to do more of a prequel and show us how it got to that point if we really wanted to see it.
Hmm.
Or obviously it can become a bigger story in the next one if they want to take it to the next level, which they do in these kinds of things sometimes. They kind
Hmm.
of go like, okay, now here's how we're going to fight back, or the military gets involved or stuff. Or kind of like Cloverfield. Did you see the Cloverfield movies? They're kind of
No,
quasi
no.
connected. That was a handheld camcorder kind of like found footage horror film
Hmm.
about these people surviving this alien monster, trouncing New York City. But then they had the second one was John Goodman, and I can't remember the actress's name, were in a bunker trying to survive that entire incident. Um, so it wasn't a sequel so much as it was like another chapter of the same story. So I feel like maybe that's an opportunity for Bird Boxes to tell another chapter in Quiet Place. These
Hmm.
kind of movies can tell more chapters and then give us a bigger, maybe they can finally explain a little bit more, kind of, like hone their universe a little bit and maybe explain it a little better.
What about likable characters?
Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of the kids in these horror movies. They tend to ruin everything.
True. I know. I was like that one kid in A Quiet Place. I'm like, man, it's been a year. That was Darwinian
Hmm.
right there. But yeah, I mean, your lead in Bird Box. Trust me, I love Sandra Bullock. I think she's a great
Hmm.
actress. But her character was not likable
No,
at all. And you're rooting for her, and you're like, "Ugh, you're so mean."
but then they put John Malkovich in there to be an even worse character, so you hate him and it makes her more likable.
Is that really the way we should write our scripts? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's a relativity there, but she's kind of very self-absorbed, and she's very resentful the entire movie about keeping these kids
Mhm.
alive. It feels like the unintended consequences there, where she's responsible for these kids,
Mhm.
one of which is hers and one which isn't. I gather, right?
Yeah. But after 5 years, either you're bonded or I mean, because no one's making her take care of those children, you
Right.
know? So I can understand if it was, like, right after the kids were born and she's like, "Oh, crap, now I got, my own kid and, the kid of this dead person, great." But it's been 5 years,
Hmm.
So I'm kinda like, yeah. I did like I was watching some selected clips though, and I did like let me think about sacrificing the little girl to the monster. I was like, "Wow, you are so likable. I love you right now. It's great." What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just one last point is they actually never did point out what would happen to children in that situation, did they? They
Mhm.
never
Again,
showed children dealing with that at all.
yeah.
So,
Again,
big question mark,
world
yeah.
world building. There was a lot of things in there that they just didn't flesh out the world completely, I think. So, what do you guys think? Let us know at writersgrouptherapy.com. You can also find us online at WG Therapy. And if you like what you hear, subscribe and share it with your friends. We'll see you next week.